Okay, I have figured out exactly what makes AMS1 feel better and more natural than AMS2, and I figured out the car that highlights it the best, so I'm going to showcase that real quick in this video. I feel like people are going to come after me a little bit about this one, but I have done a lot of testing on AMS1, a lot of testing on AMS2, and I've tried multiple different cars, and I'm 100% confident that I have identified the handling characteristic that is incorrect in AMS2 and correct in AMS1, and we're going to talk about that in this video. All right, let's get it. We're going to talk about the physics in a low-powered front-wheel drive car such as the one we're driving in AMS2 and AMS1. This car has similar power. Both of them probably track prepped at some level. There might be some differences in the tires used and things like that. But at the end of the day, these are both the car that I'm showing in this video, which is a Honda Fit that is spec'd out for Sundae Cup in Grid Life, and the Copa Uno that we're racing in AMS1 and AMS2. Both of them are somewhat similar powered, both front wheel drive, and should have somewhat similar driving characteristics. This video is from YouTube channel Rossum Sauce. I'm going to link the video into the description. He has a lot of videos from his adventures of Grid Life Sundae Cup. So we are going to look at a lap at Watkins Glen, which I am then going to drive in the racing in both of the sims, and we're going to look at specifically what I want you to focus on is I want you to focus on Rossum's or Ross's steering inputs. I chose this video because his steering inputs are super clear in this video. It's also a track that I can get in both of the games, so we can kind of emulate what's happening on track in both of these games. As we come around the final turn and we go onto the straight, I want you to really pay attention to his steering inputs. He comes into T1. He should be kind of hard on the brakes. A lot of the weight is going to transfer to those front wheels. Now watch what happens. He took the NASCAR line really wide there. Let's watch T1 again. This is really the turn we're probably going to focus the most on. I'm going to go into slow motion here. Okay, so he's hard on the brakes and downshifting. And a little heel toe, I believe. Now, watch his steering input. He's going to go right just subtly, and look at the degree. His steering angle only went just ever so slightly. Let me grab a steering wheel right here. Okay, so as he turned in, his steering ratio went right about to there. Okay, and then he gets lift off oversteer. This is a fast corner too, and he's taking the NASCAR line, so he's going really fast into this corner. So hard on the brakes, just a subtle turn in, then there's lift off oversteer, and he ends up counter steering. Then the car neutralizes at the apex, and then he has to put in more steering angle to power out of the corner. So the steering angle is coming after the apex. It's not quite going to 90 degrees. It's probably going to about 75 to 80 degrees there. And then he's powering to come out of the corner. Straighten up the steering wheel as he gets fully onto the power. Okay, so the turn in, the amount of steering angle that it took to get the car to turn into that fast corner when on the brakes was that much. It was boom, and then the car fully turned in. The reason for that is with that front wheel drive car, if he's coming into the corner and he's smashing the brake like you would into turn one, all of that weight is on the front wheels. Think about a front wheel drive car. All of your power, all of the weight, everything is over those front wheels, and the back wheels are literally just hanging out really light. There's no weight over those back wheels, so it gets loose. So it's not going to take much turn angle to get the car front wheels to turn in. Also, if you turn the wheel to an extreme level, like let's say 90 degrees before you get to the apex, your wheels are doing a lot. Your front wheels are doing a ton. Your front wheels are braking, which is taking up the amount of grip that those tires have. The front wheels, then if you turn the steering angle to 90 degrees, they're going to be overwhelmed and you're going to push through and understeer to the corner. So all of that turning is not done with extreme steering angle. That turning is done with weight going over the brakes and then a subtle steering angle. So look at this car here, 111 horsepower, right around 2,000 pounds. That is a pretty similar specs, maybe a little more powerful and maybe a little lighter than the car that we saw in that video. But it's going to be like close enough that the cars at least have the same handling characteristics. As we come onto the straight, leaning towards turn 1, let's see how the car behaves as I start to actually push a little bit. Braking a little bit early. Just a little bit of turn in, oversteer, and then having to angle the steering wheel. Felt a lot like what we saw in that video. Let's brake a tiny bit later this time. Definitely handles quite different there. In the Copa Montana car, I also noticed handling characteristics off, specifically under braking. Couldn't put my finger on it. And then I got into this car, the Copa Uno, and I immediately realized what the issue was. When there's, I'm going, my wheel's almost upside down there to get it to turn. So let's try T1, because that's one of the turns we really noticed this car behavior in that Honda Fit video. Let's try in T1 to go deeper and heavier on the brakes, get all the weight on the front wheel, and we're going to try to turn in with minimal steering input and see what happens. We're going to try to replicate what we saw in the YouTube video and what we felt and saw in AMS1. Late-ish on the brakes, heavy on the brakes, and see if just a little bit of steering input will get us to turn. Little bit of steering input and the car does nothing. I had to come almost to a stop. The car was not turning in, the rear end was not kicking out. Okay, I could go through and play every single corner this way. I think I would lose a lot of people's focus, and I think you would get the point after a corner or two. I am going to play through the entire analysis of the Honda Fit lap, and then I'm going to play an unedited lap of AMS1 and unedited lap of AMS2 for you to make some judgments. I also want you to notice the steering put up the S's, which is right after T1. You're going to really see some interesting things there. So the steering, in a sense, you could say the steering is done by braking, the steering's done not by the steering wheel, the steering's done by braking. So let's watch again. The steering angle at most gets to, what would you say, maybe 15% 15 degrees to the right, maybe 20 degrees to the right. So watch it one more time in slow motion. Just a tiny bit of steering input. And then there's so much grip on the front end that subtle amount of steering input was enough to turn into the apex and enough to create some oversteer that we had to counter. Then on exit, we are putting in more steering input to power through, but it's not a crazy amount. It's not 90 degrees. Okay? Alright, let's speed it back up and let's watch the rest of the lap and see what else we get. Okay, so subtle little steering angle there. Subtle steering angle there. You don't, in a low powered car like this, you wouldn't want to put in a lot of steering angle because you would scrub the tires and you would lose a lot of speed. Honda S2000 flying by there. This car, like I said, only has about 100 horsepower, so any speed that you accidentally scrub off is really going to kill your time. I mean, barely any steering input there too to get it to turn into the bus stop. Once he goes on heavy onto the brakes, there's so much weight on the front end, it takes the smallest, the smallest, most minute amount of steering input to get the car to turn in. I mean, he almost immediately goes into oversteer without even, I mean, the amount of steering angle he put in to turn in is like that much. And then he goes immediately into an oversteering situation. So his steering angle is left as he's turning to the right. Okay, and now he gets a little bit more turn in. But look how small these steering inputs are. Look how small those steering inputs are. Taking a lot of curb. Okay, we got another fast right-hander here. Again, he's hovering in that like 10 to 15 degree range. And then he's feeling every time his steering wheel, as this is a right-hand turn, every time his steering wheel is turning left, I'm assuming he's feeling that back end wanting to kick out. And then it grips up and then it balances, and that's where he holds the position steady. Alright, back to full speed. Okay. There, he did put a good amount of steering input in to get it to turn there, but that wasn't a situation where he's hard on the brakes. So he was probably under power for that turn or was coasting, because he was coming out of the one turn. He was coming out of the right-hander and then on to the left-hander. I don't think he had to be super heavy on the brakes there. So he was able to do it with a little more steering input. You saw the same thing there, just a subtle turn in, oversteer, correction, and then back to the power. It's a pattern. It's almost every single corner, and it's the way that a front wheel drive car is driven. All right, we got a slower corner. Still not a ton of steering angle. Not a crazy amount of steering angle. No oversteer there, though, it didn't seem. Alright, we got a fast left-hander here. Little turn in. No oversteer, pretty balanced there. And then the final corner of the lap. We definitely saw and heard some oversteer there. Let's do one more lap, and then we're going to hop over into AMS1, AMS2. That probably killed my lap time, but that's okay. Alright, we're gonna really push through the bus stop here. Alright, I might do one more lap. I gotta get a lap I'm happy with. Alright, last lap. I mean, I'm going over 90 degrees just to get the car to turn. Abusing the front tires. Definitely handles quite different there. I mean, going up the S's, I turned the wheel all the way to 90 degrees. Turn it to about 70 degrees there. I mean, it's fun and I like the way it drives. But there's interesting behaviors in how it handles. It's really, and I do. So this is one thing I would say. I think these behaviors are this characteristic of having to put in a lot of steering lock to turn, and the car not really being active and alive under braking. It is a characteristic that exists in, well, there we go, we got a little oversteer there. It is a characteristic that does exist in other cars, but it's not so pronounced that you immediately notice it and you immediately think, oh, that's what it is, that's the problem. And I was doing my testing, so basically the video I was making, the video I was trying to make was comparing car for car, which is better, AMS1 or AMS2, and I started with the Porsche Cup, and I noticed that AMS1 felt better, and I didn't know why, and I couldn't put a finger on why. Then I hopped in the Copa Montana cars, or Montana, and in the Copa Montana car, I also noticed handling characteristics off, specifically under braking. Couldn't put my finger on it. And then I got into this car, the Copa Uno, and I immediately realized what the issue was. When there's, I mean, my wheel's almost upside down there to get it to turn. And I noticed this issue under braking. The fact that in a front wheel drive car, all of that weight going on the nose, the rear end should be kicking out, it should take only the ever so slightest turn in, and then I should put more steering lock and put the pedal down to get it to exit the corner. And it's the opposite of what's happening here. I'm having to put extreme steering lock on corner entry, like that, and then I'm straightening up the wheel on corner exit. It's extreme steering lock to turn, and then straightening up the wheel on corner exit. It's just not how you drive a front wheel drive car. Extreme angle. We got a little rear end movement there. Okay, it was better in that corner, to be fair. A little bit better in that corner. A little bit better in that corner too. Alright, let me try going deeper into the corner under the brakes. Let's see if we can get that rear end wiggling. Look at how much on the bottom right of the screen we're wearing out these tires. I mean, so let's try T1, because that's one of the turns we really noticed this car behavior in that Honda Fit video. Let's try in T1 to go deeper and heavier on the brakes, get all the weight on the front wheel, and we're going to try to turn in with minimal steering input and see what happens. We're going to try to replicate what we saw in the YouTube video and what we felt and saw in AMS1. Late-ish on the brakes, heavy on the brakes, and see if just a little bit of steering input will get us to turn. A little bit of steering input and the car does nothing. I mean, I had to come almost to a stop. The car was not turning in, the rear end was not kicking out. I'm gonna try one more lap. I do want to be clear too, I really enjoy AMS2. If you watch my single player tournament, sim racing tournament, where I tried to decide which racing sim is the absolute best for single player experience, AMS2 was number 2 on my list and just barely got beat in the final. I also tell people all the time this is one of the first sims they should download as they get into sim racing. I mean, I just can't replicate. I can't replicate it. I have to turn in the steering wheel. I have to just yank the steering wheel to the right to get it to turn in. Yeah. Alright, so that video was a little different of what I originally set out to do. So I originally was playing AMS2 and AMS1 side by side. I tried the Porsche Cups first. Then I tried the Copa Montana, and then I tried the Copa Uno right there. I was going to hop into the Formula 3 car, and I was even going to try some rallycross and just notice some handling characteristics and some differences. But when I got to those front-wheel drive cars, the handling characteristic was so drastic, and it highlighted that major issue of when you're driving and you go heavy on the brakes and all that weight goes on the front wheels and the rear end goes light and I start to turn in, it should be only a small amount of steering input. Small amount of steering input should be what I'm using to turn into the corner, and then I'm just balancing on the rear end, just balancing through the corner. And it was so pronounced in those front-wheel drive cars. And then I hopped back into those rear-wheel drive cars and started to feel, oh, that is what's going on, and that's why AMS2 doesn't quite feel correct. You are doing way too much with the steering wheel to get AMS2 to drive, and you are not doing much with the pedals. You are kind of like on the gas with the steering wheel, or on the gas with the pedal on exit, and then you're balancing it with the steering wheel, and you're kind of just like pedal to the metal. And I'm not just talking about front wheel drive cars in this case. And then on corner entry, you kind of just yank the steering wheel to the right to get it to turn in, and that's just not how you drive in real life. And this video that I referenced at the beginning is my evidence of that. So I do want to be very, very clear though. If you go and watch my single player sim racing tournament, I am a huge fan of AMS2. I am not trying to bash AMS2. I'm not trying to say this racing game sucks. I love AMS2. I love Riza Studios. I think they do such a good job of developing the game over time. The handling characteristics of the car is so drastically improved from what it was a few months ago. But this just highlights it's still not quite there. And I hope if they see this video that it's just something that they can address to make this game even better, because I do really like this game. But also, if you haven't tried, excuse me, if you haven't tried AMS1, I feel like there's so many people out there who've never given AMS1 a try, and it is so good. I'm gonna close out the video there. I did record Porsche Cups, and a video comparing the Porsche Cup in AMS1 and the Porsche Cup in AMS2. And I also recorded the Copa Montana in AMS1 and AMS2. I decided just to make this video focused on front wheel drive, but if you do want to see that video as well, let me know in the comments, because it won't take me that long to edit that video, and I can post that as well. But I thought some of it would be a little redundant considering I highlighted those handling features in this video. But let me know in the comments, do you want to see those clips from the Porsche Cup? Do you want to see those clips from the Copa Montana, side by side Automobilista 1 and Automobilista 2? And maybe some of the other classes, do you want to see the Rallycross compared? That's something I've thought about as well. Thank you so much for watching. Also really appreciate all the kind comments with the last few videos. I'm really trying to push towards getting to 500 subscribers by the end of March. So if you feel so inclined, if you feel like getting a lot of AMS1 nerdiness, if you feel like getting to watch some videos of me talking about why some of the older sims are better than some of the newer sims, or my obsession with slow front wheel drive cars, if you want to see more of that stuff, hit that subscribe button. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.